Princess Marie of Edinburgh, more commonly known as Marie of Romania, was the last reigning Queen Consort of Romania as the wife of King Ferdinand I. Born into the British royal family, she was titled Princess Marie of Edinburgh at birth. Her parents were Prince Alfred, Duke of Edinburgh, and Grand Duchess Maria Alexandrovna of Russia. Marie's early years were spent in Kent, Malta and Coburg. After refusing a proposal from her cousin, the future King George V, she was chosen as the future wife of Crown Prince Ferdinand of Romania, the heir apparent of King Carol I, in 1892. Marie was crown princess between 1893 and 1914, and became immediately popular with the Romanian people. Marie had controlled her weak-willed husband even before his ascension in 1914, prompting a Canadian newspaper to state that few royal consorts have wielded greater influence than did Queen Marie during the reign of her husband. After the outbreak of World War I, Marie urged Ferdinand to ally himself with the Triple Entente and declare war on Germany, which he eventually did in 1916. During the early stages of fighting, Bucharest was occupied by the Central Powers and Marie, Ferdinand and the 5 children took refuge in Moldavia. There, she and her 3 daughters acted as nurses in military hospitals, caring for soldiers who were wounded or afflicted by cholera. On the 1st of December 1918, the province of Transylvania, following Bessarabia and Bukovina, united with the Old Kingdom. Marie, now Queen Consort of Greater Romania, attended the Paris Peace Conference of 1919, where she campaigned for international recognition of the enlarged Romania. In 1922, she and Ferdinand were crowned in a specially built cathedral in the ancient city of Alba Iulia, in an elaborate ceremony which mirrored their status as Queen and King of a united state. As Queen, she was very popular, both in Romania and abroad. In 1926, Marie and 2 of her children undertook a diplomatic tour of the United States. They were received enthusiastically by the people and visited several cities before returning to Romania. There, Marie found that Ferdinand was gravely ill and he died a few months later. Now Queen Dowager Marie refused to be part of the Regency Council which reigned over the country under the minority of her grandson, King Michael. In 1930, Marie's eldest son Carol, who had waived his rights to succession, deposed his son and usurped the throne, becoming King Carol II. He removed Marie from the political scene and strived to crush her popularity. As a result, Marie moved away from Bucharest and spent the rest of her life either in the countryside or at her home by the Black Sea. In 1937, she became ill with cirrhosis and died the following year. Following Romania's transition to a socialist republic, the monarchy was excoriated by communist officials. Several biographies of the royal family described Marie either as a drunkard or as a promiscuous woman, referring to her many alleged affairs and to orgies she had supposedly organized before and during the war. In the years preceding the Romanian Revolution of 1989, Marie's popularity recovered and she was offered as a model of patriotism to the population. Marie is primarily remembered for her work as a nurse, but is also known for her extensive writing, including her critically acclaimed autobiography. Early life. Birth. Marie was the eldest daughter and second child of Prince Alfred, Duke of Edinburgh, and the former Grand Duchess Maria Alexandrovna of Russia, respectively the son of Queen Victoria and the daughter of Emperor Alexander II. She was born at her parents' residence, Eastwell Manor in Kent, on the 29th of October 1875, at 10:30 a. In the presence of her father. Her birth was celebrated by firing the Park and Tower guns. She was named Marie Alexandra Victoria after her mother and grandmothers, but she was informally known as Missy. The Duke of Edinburgh read that his daughter promises to be as fine a child as her brother and gives every evidence of finely developed lungs, and did so before she was fairly in the world. As her child of the reigning British monarch in the male line, Marie was formally styled Her Royal Highness Princess Marie of Edinburgh from birth. Marie's christening took place in the private chapel of Windsor Castle on the 15th of December 1875 and was officiated by Arthur Stanley and Gerald Wellesley, Dean of Windsor. The baptism, of a strictly private nature, took place one day after the ceremony marking the anniversary of the death of her paternal grandfather, Prince Alfred. Marie's godparents were Empress Maria Alexandrovna, the Princess of Wales, the Duchess of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, the Tsarevich of Russia and the Duke of Connaught and Strathearn. Upbringing: Marie and her siblings, Prince Alfred, and Princesses Victoria, Melita, Alexandra and Beatrice, spent much of their early life at Eastwell Park, which the mother preferred instead of Clarence House, their official residence. In her memoirs, Marie would remember Eastwell fondly. The Duke of Edinburgh was largely absent from his children's lives, due to his position in the British Royal Navy, and the life was governed by the mother. Marie would later state that she did not even know the color of her father's hair until she looked at later portraits of him, believing it to be much darker than it actually was. When he was at home, the Duke would often play with his children, inventing many games for them. Of all her siblings, Marie was closest to her sister Victoria Melita, who was 1 year younger, but whom everyone believed to be the older girl because of her stature, much to the princess's dismay. The Edinburgh children were all baptized and raised in the Anglican faith. This upset the Russian Orthodox mother. The Duchess of Edinburgh was a supporter of the idea of separating generations, and Marie deeply regretted the fact that her mother never allowed chatting between the two as if were equals. Nonetheless, the Duchess was independent-minded, cultured, and the most important person in her children's lives. At the behest of the mother, Marie and her sisters were taught French, which they detested and rarely ever spoke. Overall, the Duchess neglected her daughters' education, considering them not very bright or gifted. They were permitted to read aloud, but in the fields of painting and drawing, areas in which they had inherited Queen Victoria's talent, the girls received only a pedestrian instruction. The Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh frequently received members of the royal family at Eastwell Park, inviting them for breakfast nearly daily, and in 1885, Marie and Victoria Melita served as bridesmaids at the wedding of their Aunt Beatrice and Prince Henry of Battenburn. Among Marie's playmates were her maternal cousins, Grand Dukes Nicholas and George, and Grand Duchess Senior of Russia. The other two Russian cousins, Grand Duke Michael and Grand Duchess Olga, being too young for the Edinburgh girls. Other playmates included the children of the maternal uncle, Grand Duke Vladimir Alexandrovich of Russia. In 1886, when Marie was 11 years old, the Duke of Edinburgh was named Commander-in-Chief of the Mediterranean Fleet, and the family took up residence at San Antonio Palace in Malta. Marie would remember her time in Malta as the happiest memory of my existence. It was in Malta that Marie found her first love, Maurice Burke, the captain of the Duke's ship, whom Marie called Captain Dear. Marie was prone to fits of jealousy when Burke would pay more attention to one of her sisters than to her. The Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh were greatly loved in Malta, and San Antonio Palace was frequently full of guests. Marie and Victoria Melita received white horses from the mother and went to the local hippodrome nearly daily, apart from Saturday. During the first year in Malta, a French governess oversaw the princess's education, but, due to her failing health, She was replaced the following year by a much younger German woman. At San Antonio, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh always maintained a room ready for Prince George of Wales, the second son of the Prince of Wales, later King Edward VII, who was in the Royal Navy. George called the three elder Edinburgh girls the three dearests, but favoured Marie the most. Meanwhile, the Duke of Edinburgh became heir presumptive to his childless paternal uncle, Ernest II, Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, upon the Prince of Wales's renunciation of his rights to the duchy. Consequently, the family relocated to Coburg in 1889. Marie later came to view this moment as truly the end of a life that had been absolute happiness and joy, without clouds, of a life with no disappointments or delusions and without any discordant note. The Duchess, who was pro-German, hired a German governess for her daughters, bought them plain clothing and even had them confirmed in the Lutheran faith. The family spent the summers at Rosenau Castle. Duke Ernest was described by Marie as having his oddities. His court was less strict than other German courts of the time. In Coburg, the princess's education was broadened. More emphasis was placed on painting and music, which were taught by Anna Messing and Mrs. Helfrich, respectively. On Thursdays and Sundays, Marie and her sisters went to the Coburg Theatre, an experience which they enjoyed greatly. Marie and Victoria Melita often observed the brothers' friends and made comments on whom they liked better, an aspect which Marie believed was inevitable in the lives of girls who have brothers. Another activity which the girls enjoyed at Coburg was attending winter parties organized by the mother, during which they would ice skate and play different games, such as ice hockey. Marriage. Marie grew into a lovely young woman with sparkling blue eyes and silky fair hair. She was courted by several royal bachelors, including Prince George of Wales, who in 1892 became second in line to inherit the throne. Queen Victoria, the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Edinburgh all approved, but the Princess of Wales and the Duchess of Edinburgh did not. The Princess of Wales disliked the family's pro-German sentiment, and the Duchess of Edinburgh did not wish for her daughter to remain in England, which she resented. She also disliked the fact that the Princess of Wales, whose father had been a minor German prince before being called to the Danish throne, was higher than she in the order of precedence. The Duchess of Edinburgh was also against the idea of a marriage between first cousins, which was not allowed by her native Russian Orthodox Church. Thus, when George proposed to her, Marie informed him that the marriage was impossible and that he must remain her beloved chum. Queen Victoria would later comment that Georgie lost Missy by waiting and waiting. Around this time, King Carol I of Romania was looking for a suitable bride for Crown Prince Ferdinand. In order to secure the succession and assure the continuation of the House of Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen, possibly motivated by the prospect of removing tensions between Russia and Romania on the subject of control over Bessarabia, the Duchess of Edinburgh suggested that Marie meet Ferdinand. Marie and Ferdinand first became acquainted during a gala dinner, and the pair conversed in German. She found him shy but amiable, and the second meeting went just as well. Once the pair were formally engaged, Queen Victoria wrote to her daughter, Princess Victoria of Hessen by Rhine, "That is nice and amp. The parents are charming, but the country is very insecure and amp. The immorality of the society at Bucharest quite awful. Of course the marriage will be delayed some time, as Missy won't be 17 till the end of October." German Empress Victoria, Marie's aunt, wrote to her daughter, Crown Princess Sophia of Greece, that Missy is till now quite delighted, but the poor child is so young, how can she guess what is before her? Quote, in late 1892, King Carol visited London in order to meet the Duke of Edinburgh and Queen Victoria. who eventually agreed to the marriage and appointed him a Knight of the Garter. On the 10th of January 1893, Marie and Ferdinand were married at Sigmaringen Castle in 3 ceremonies, one civil, one Catholic and one Anglican. The civil ceremony was performed in the Red Hall of the castle by Karl von Windel, the German emperor being the first of the witnesses present to sign the marriage act. At 4 o'clock, the Catholic ceremony took place at the town church, with Marie being led to the altar by her father. The Anglican ceremony was more modest and was conducted in one of the chambers of the castle. Although King Carol granted the couple Honigtag, Marie and Ferdinand spent a few days at the castle of Kraukenwies in Bavaria. For that, they left for the countryside, their journey being interrupted briefly by a stop at Vienna, where they visited Emperor Franz Joseph. Due to growing tensions between Austria and Romania, the couple's visit was brief and they arrived in the border town of Predeal following a nighttime crossing of Transylvania by train. Marie was warmly welcomed by the Romanian people, who were longing for a more personal monarchy. Crown Princess. Domestic life. The first years of Marie and Ferdinand's marriage were not particularly easy, and Marie would later tell her husband that, "It is such a shame that we had to waste so many years of our youth just to learn how to live together." Gradually, the couple's relationship became based on a cordial friendship. Marie accorded Ferdinand respect she believed he was due as a man and, later, as king, and he respected her because he realized that she had a better understanding of the world than he did. Eventually, Marie came to believe that she and Ferdinand were the best associates, the most loyal companions. But our lives intertwine only in certain matters. Ferdinand enjoyed Marie's presence during military marches and consequently, she was frequently invited to this sort of event. Marie gave birth to her first child, Prince Carol, only 9 months after the marriage, on the 15th of October 1893. Although Marie requested the use of chloroform in order to ease the pains of labor, doctors were reluctant to do so, believing that women must pay in agony for the sins of Eve. After Marie's mother and Queen Victoria insisted, King Carol eventually allowed the use of the drug on his niece-in-law. Marie did not derive much joy from the arrival of her firstborn, later writing that she felt like turning head to the wall. Similarly, although Marie was constantly reminded by Carol's wife Elizabeth that childbirth is the most glorious moment in life, she could only feel a longing for her mother at the birth of her second child, Princess Elizabeth, in 1894. After becoming accustomed to life in Romania, Marie began to rejoice at the births of her children, namely Princess Maria, nicknamed Mignon in the family, Prince Nicholas, nicknamed Nicky, Princess Iana and Prince Misha. King Carol and Queen Elizabeth promptly removed Prince Carol and Princess Elizabeth from Marie's care, considering it inappropriate for them to be raised by the young parents. Marie loved her children, but found it difficult to even scold them at times, thus failing to properly supervise them. Consequently, the royal children were given somewhat of an education, but were never sent to school, as the royal household could not provide what a classroom education would have. Most of the children's personalities became severely flawed as they grew older. Prime Minister Ion G. Duca would later write that, "It was like wish to leave for Romania as completely unprepared for succeeding life at court." From the start, Marie had trouble adjusting to life in Romania. Her personality and high spirits frequently created controversies at the Romanian court, and she disliked the austere atmosphere of her household. She wrote that she had not been brought down to Romania to be adored and spoilt and made much of. She had come to be part of the machinery King Carol had wound up. She had been imported to be trimmed, educated, cut down and trained according to the great man's conception of things. Quote, When describing her early days in Romania, Marie wrote that, for long hours would mope, whilst young husband did his military service. All alone in rooms, hated, heavy German rooms. Marie's paternal aunt, the Dowager German Empress, wrote to her daughter, the Crown Princess of Greece, that Marie of Romania is more to be pitied than you. The king is a great tyrant in his family, and has crushed the independence in Ferdinand so that no one cares about him, and his beautiful and gifted little wife, I fear, gets into scrapes, and like a butterfly, instead of hovering over the flowers, burns her pretty wings by going rather near the fire. Easily learning to speak the Romanian language, she followed her mother's advice to dress carefully and show respect for Orthodox rituals. Marie and Ferdinand were advised by King Carol to maintain a restricted group of friends. Thus, Marie would lament that her familial circle had been shrunk to only the king and Ferdinand, who stood in mighty awe of the ironed old man, forever trembling that any action of might displease the duty-bound head of the family. The Times literary supplement read that Marie had found herself, for the hour of her arrival in Bucharest, under the tutelage of that stern disciplinarian King Carol I. In 1896, Ferdinand and Marie moved to Cotroceni Palace, which had been extended by the Romanian architect Grigore Cerchez, and to which Marie added her own designs. The following year, Ferdinand was struck down with typhoid fever. For days, he was delirious and, despite his doctor's best efforts, came close to dying. During this time, Marie exchanged numerous letters with her family in Britain and was terrified at the prospect of losing her husband. King Carol still had an heir in Prince Carol, whose young age presented issues. Thus, the whole family desperately wished for Ferdinand to pull through. Eventually, he did, and he and Marie went to Sinai, the site of Police Castle, for a period of recovery. Nonetheless, the couple was not able to attend celebrations for Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee that summer. During Ferdinand's convalescence, Marie spent most of her time with her two children, taking them on long walks and picking flowers with them. The winter of 1897-1898 was spent with the Russian imperial family on the French Riviera, where Marie often rode horses, in spite of the low temperatures. Around this time, Marie met Lieutenant Georg Cantacuzene, a member, albeit through an illegitimate branch, of an ancient Romanian princely family and a descendant of Prince Urban Cantacuzino. Although not very good-looking, Cantacuzene stood out using his sense of humor and fashion, as well as his talent in horse riding. The two soon became romantically involved, but their affair was terminated after it became known by the public. As much as she condemned Marie's behavior, her mother allowed her to come to Coburg when, in 1897, she apparently became pregnant. Historian Julia Gelady believes that Marie gave birth to a child at Coburg. The child may either have been stillborn or sent to an orphanage. Immediately following its birth, there was speculation on whether Marie's second daughter, Mignon, was Cantacuzene's daughter, and not Ferdinand's. Over the following years, Marie was also rumored to have been romantically linked to Grand Duke Boris Vladimirovich of Russia, Waldorf-Astor, Prince Babu Sturby and Joe Boyle. In 1903, Ferdinand and Marie inaugurated Palaiza, an Art Nouveau castle in Sinai that King Carol commissioned for the royal couple. Marie only learned of the extent of repression used to quell the 1907 Romanian peasants' revolt once it was too late to intercede. She afterwards took to dressing quite often in folk costume, both at home and in public, initiating a fashion trend among young upper-class women. On the 29th of June 1913, the Tsardom of Bulgaria declared war on Greece, thus starting the Second Balkan War. On the 4th of July, Romania entered the war, allying itself with Greece. The war, which lasted a little over a month, was worsened by a cholera epidemic. Marie would look upon her first encounter with an epidemic as a turning point in her life. With the help of Dr. Ioan Cantacuzino and Sister Pucci, a Red Cross nurse, Marie traveled between Romania and Bulgaria, lending a helping hand in hospitals. These events would prepare her for her experiences in the Great War. As a result of the war, Romania gained possession of southern Dobrudia, including the coastal town of Balcic, which Marie would come to cherish in 1924 and use to host her residence. Soon after the war ended, Carol became ill. On the 28th of June 1914, at Sarajevo, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was assassinated. This came as a shock to Marie and her family, who were vacationing at Sinai when the news reached them. On the 28th of July, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia and, as Marie saw it, the world's peace was torn to shreds. Then, on the 3rd of August, King Carol held a Crown Council at Sinai, in order to decide whether Romania should enter the war. Although Carol was in favor of his country supporting Germany and the Central Powers, the Council decided against it. Not long after the Council, Carol's illness worsened and he became bedridden. The possibility of his abdication was even discussed. Eventually, he died on the 10th of October 1914, and Ferdinand automatically succeeded as king.